My name is Daniel Phelps. I work with the Communications Technology program. I know each and every one of you. The only new face I see is right over here. Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Kala, and I'm a graduate. I graduated in May, and I work in the research lab in bio. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So are you a graduate student now, or you're?
No, I'm not a graduate student.
Okay, cool. But you're working as a college assistant or research assistant. Awesome, cool. What projects are you working on?
Right now we're working with some. Right now we're making proteins, and we're going to do some processing on mutations and stuff, and find out the differences between the wild type and mutated proteins. Yeah, that's a lot of biochemistry and.
Awesome. So and there's a lot of 3D printing stuff going on in biochemistry right now, which is kind of a. Yeah. They're doing some really interesting things, printing out, celluloid scaffolding and putting cells on them, and the cells are growing and kind of building ears and cartilage and stuff like that. That's kind of what they can do now, which is really neat. So I'm an adjunct here, but I'm also what's called a multimedia production specialist. I pulled that from my CUNY First title. So I guess that kind of describes me. Like many folks here on campus, I wear a lot of hats. I see Wen Ying here. She wears to play with lots of different technology and figure out how to integrate it into classroom use. And over the past year, we've been experimenting with 3D printing. Now, I say experimenting because there's a lot of things wrong with it right now. Not necessarily wrong, but I don't think it's ready really for prime time in a couple different spaces, at least at the capability that we have now. But that's kind of besides the point. I'm here to talk to you guys about how you can integrate this into your classroom environment. Okay. Now, everybody kind of has a different specialty, and one of the things that 3D printing can do, just like any creation of media, is it allows you to create something out of nothing. Pull something from either from the internet. You can remix it. You can make something new. You can make something better. You can add to the environment. You can share all of these things that we have in our digital media courses and our digital media culture. Are reflected in the physical media. So what is 3D printing? Is anybody not familiar with what 3D printing is? Not quite? Okay, so 3D printing, Ryan, can you zoom in to the printer, please? 3D printing, everybody kind of understands what it is. It's think of it as a computerized, fancy computerized glue gun that lays down a 3D model layer by layer, okay? So technically it's called fused deposition modeling, okay? And that's fancy for taking a solid, which is this plastic right here. This is actually, this is PLA, okay? And this is a corn-based polyolleic acid. It's corn-based plastic. It's biodegradable. It doesn't work well with sunlight. You don't want to get it wet, all of these other things. But you can eat it and it won't kill you, which is the most important thing. The second most important thing is you can melt this and it doesn't give off any noxious fumes, okay? We have ABS here, and that does quite the opposite. When you melt it, or when it changes states from a solid to a liquid, it gives off some fumes and you have to worry about ventilation and stuff like that. So on this campus, we have two FDM printers, okay, that use, this is technically what this is called plastic welding wire. That's what it used to be called before it started to be used in the 3D printing industry. Now we call it, now it's just spools of 3D printing material, okay? So we call it filament technically, but filament's a little bit ambiguous term. So the filament comes in all different sorts of properties, okay? The most noticeable is color. It comes in lots of different colors, from clear to natural to undyed to flexible. You can we have a rubber-like material that you can print out. We also have a dissolvable material that allows you to print complex structures. We have another printer in the back that is the Makerbot Replicator 2X that prints in two separate colors. It can also do multiple materials, so it has an expanded capability. Whether or not it does it any well, that remains to be seen. One of the challenges with this, and I wish Jin Bai was here, but one of the challenges that we've had with using the 3D printers in a classroom environment is meeting deadlines. Are supported by outside parties that can come in and fix them when they break, and they break quite often. So think about it as, if anybody's old enough to remember when printers first came out for computers, and they kind of jammed, or the ink was bad, or they never printed right because the drivers were bad, or they just were overall just a pain in the butt to work with. Printers, and printers still are, okay? Think about it like that, but now you're working on 3 different axes. So 3D printing is a challenge no matter what type of equipment that you have. So the way the 3D printer works is it pulls the filament up through the filament guide tube into an extruder. Now the extruder's job is to push the filament through heated element that melts it, extrudes it, lays it down on a bed of acrylic. It's pretty simple, right? Well, there's some complex things that are actually happening here that lead to high failure rates. And the failure rate is something that I'm going to talk about quite often when we get into the really the design portion of this workshop, where we're going to go in and actually make stuff. You have to take into consideration the technology that you're using to print your models out. So this is an FDM printer. There's lots of other printers that you have available that you can purchase. You can purchase models online and have them printed at a company like Shapeways. And those will give you models of different properties. You can get them in steel and bronze. Printing out for your specific departments, don't necessarily think about, I mean, definitely think about us up here in the Makerspace first, but at the same time, if you do have a budget that's flexible enough to allow you to purchase things from Shapeways or another 3D printing vendor, by all means, go for that, especially if you need a material that's not plastic.
UPS store locations actually have 3D printers in them now.
They're starting to.
Wow.
Yeah.
One in Manhattan the other day and they had them there.
Yeah, was it being used?
Yeah, they were using it.
That's great.
It costs a lot though.
It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money. We're going to take a look at Shapeways a little bit later, and we'll see how much some of this stuff does cost. Now, cost is definitely a concern to take into consideration when printing out a model. You know, up here we're fortunate enough to work with departments, and when departments want to come in and work with the 3D model, I usually make a gentleman's agreement to say, if you're going to use a 3D printer, please buy some expendables, because these are the hardest things to come about. So, as you know, purchasing things here on campus usually happens within a 3-month period once a year. Okay, so and we usually have to have enough material to, excuse me, enough material to last us throughout the year. So this is the Replicator 2. It prints via an SD card. Okay, you load up the model on the SD card, you pop it in, you say print out, and it just goes most of the time. All right. Right now, Kevin Lynch is having one of his models print out, and it was actually trying to fail earlier, and I did not let it. But it's a very complex model that has a lot of support structure, and we'll talk about what support structure is. So this, I think this is going to take about 3.5 hours to print. I started it maybe 45 minutes ago. So we might get halfway through by the time we're all done with this. Yeah. So, but it'll definitely be done today. You know, keep your fingers crossed if it hasn't broken. But we do have some completed models here that you can take a look at. This is actually a mathematical algorithm that has been syllabled, okay, I guess you would call it. It's created into a 3D form using a program called OpenSCAD, which is an open source programming language that you can input all sorts of variables, and you can make physical objects out of kind of theoretical ideas. This is another one. I use this as a demonstration for how strong some of this material is, and I'm no spring chicken, and it's extremely strong. Now, if you really look at this stuff, specifically, if you look inside, you'll see that there's a honeycomb pattern in there. Now this is called internal support structure. Now, the internal support structure gives all of the objects its rigidity. When you print out an object, you get to determine how much support structure you want to put in there. You can fill it up 100%. You can make it completely full. Okay, so it's a solid object that costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time to print, but it's very strong, and it's a solid piece of plastic. Or you can just print the outside shell. You have to think about these models as eggs, right? So even that model that's very, very complex is a very complex eggshell. So you have the outside that you have to print and the inside that you have to either fill or not fill up. Okay. We also have 3D models that are not just a single piece, okay, but multiple pieces. This is a rocket that I've used with the SEMA program here on campus that is 2 or 3 pieces, and some of these pieces actually screw together like nuts and bolts. And this has flown, okay, and come down, and it's so light it actually comes down quite easy. But this is a flying model, and the kids really kind of enjoy this. So, you know, when thinking about your models, if you're inventing them, you're creating them from nothing, don't necessarily think about the limitations of the build plate, which is roughly the size of a loaf of like sourdough bread, okay? So about this big. I usually tell my students, you know, dream of anything you want to create, as long as it can be made out of plastic and it's the size of a loaf of bread, you'll be fine, okay?
How long do those take?
Those 2 objects, here, you want to toss me one so I can get it on camera? So this object took about 3 days to print. This was at its finest print level, so 3 days. That one took, you can throw it, Kevin?
So literally it takes 72 hours?
Yeah, or more. This one took almost 4 days. And, you know, I learned a lot of rules with some of these, is that, you know, you don't want to do a print that you have to walk away from, because it will eventually break your machine. But that's another big thing, is these printers require a lot of time, not only to make sure that the model that you create is it's called watertight and solid, but they require a lot of finesse just to get them to this point where they're printing out as solid pieces. Okay, so have I scared anybody away too much yet? Good. I'm going to grab some water. Does anybody want any water? Yeah? Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? So now, if you want to get even more complex, we built objects such as, this is a multicopter. Some folks will call it a drone, okay? It's not. You can call it a UAV if you want, but it is it's an aerial vehicle that allows live transmission of video, but this incorporates multiple systems to make it work. So all in all, this is about 27 pieces. Probably took about 12 or 15 hours to print the entire thing out and then assemble. Now, this is an open source design that I've modified for my use, okay? And I'll show you today where you can go to find models like this to print out. You know, lots of times you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's already been invented 2 or 3 times before you thought of it. But you can make the wheel better, specifically for your needs, whether it be your research or your class or your experiments. It's all there. So this is kind of a really cool thing. I do have some pictures I'll show you in a little bit of this, but this incorporates a battery system, video transmission system, telemetry, communications, electronics distribution. Lots of cool things can be taught by just making something like this. And this happens to be a model I made last semester with my building and hacking course. We didn't work on it every day, but I showed them my progress as I was putting it together and what I was thinking in terms of the decisions I was making. I also use this model as a platform for the SEMA program, which tends to help us out getting equipment and things like that by doing 3D workshops on campus. So here at your college, how has 3D printing been used? Well, we've had this machine since February of last year, and over the course of the past year, we've done a very slow rollout by using it in very limited quantities in both the classes that I teach, but off-campus programs or on-campus programs that have nothing to do with the college curriculum, and also including EDU courses. So, you know, Jinbai this is the 2nd semester that we've been going through the EDU C230 course, which is, what's the name of the course? Teaching with Multimedia Technology. So this happens to fit perfect even within the title, and I'm sure the synopsis of the class. But what we want to do over the next year is open this up to courses that don't necessarily, open this up to courses that don't necessarily interact with technology every day. So George is here. He works with the music program. George, have you thought about any ways that you could possibly use 3D printing to to augment any of your courses?
Yes, I want them to make a simple instrument and then analyze the way that the sound comes from this instrument. Because,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I started talking about harmony, and I just keep going about like, okay, well, there's this overtone and this overtone, but I thought, well, what happens if you start from the very beginning of having, you know, a string with tension and playing around with it? But then I was like, okay, well, what if you can actually make that somehow?
Yeah, okay. You know, there's that writer named Kevin Kelly who talks about, he has got this book called What Technology Wants, and it talks about technology as kind of its own evolving animal, you know, and he uses musical instruments as a way to determine where technology is at a certain time, because musical instruments never go away. They never die, right? They're always around. The harpsichord has been around, but they tend to get iterated, much like invention, much like, you know, I was talking about the wheel earlier. They get improved upon, their sound changes, it ebbs and flows with what's popular and what falls out of popularity. So that's very interesting. I actually have a really cool model for you. It's a musical instrument from a video game called the Orcana of Time. It's yeah. So somebody created this musical instrument from the video game, and you can print it out and play it. And it's one of these really cool things, and it actually sounds just like the instrument does. So you wonder what about which came first. So we also have Kevin Lynch here, who's has the print that's coming out right now. Now, Kevin, can you talk to us about why we're printing this out and what you intend to do with your model?
At this point, I asked Daniel to print this because I wanted to learn about the technology of printing, and you know, I know you need things like support structures, and there's ways to make solid objects with these honeycomb structures inside instead of filling them up and wasting lots of plastic. So what I started with is a model of an experiment that I'm involved in at Fermilab, and this is one of the pieces of the experiment. I think this one is sort of, the real thing will be about 2 meters across and 5 meters in length.
This is the TSD.
Oh, this is the TSD.
This is the TSD.
Okay, so it's still about the right size. It's about 2 meters across and 5 meters in length, and it's going to be a vacuum cryostat, so it's going to be a vacuum vessel with superconducting cables inside of it and everything. It's as you can guess, it's kind of hard to explain the thing in words. So what I wanted to have is to show people a model of what we're building and which parts York is involved in. And so I got the engineers at Fermilab to send me a model file, and then I spent some time with Daniel trying to understand the details of what I can and can't do with the machines we have here.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. He has 5 models. They're at 1/48 scale. So if anybody's ever played with models when they were younger, you know, that's a lot of these concepts, working with scale and working with models, really come back to printing at small form factors like the printers that we have here on campus. So you know, that's one of the kind of the determining areas of study as far as why you would want to use a 3D printer for some of your work. So, you know, we've also used, you know, for Earth and Physical Science, and you pre-engineering program too. I can see a lot of use coming out of some of this stuff. So, we also use the 3D printer in, hello. We also use the 3D printer in the communications technology courses, specifically in an introduction course that's been going on for about a year that I've been teaching called Building and Hacking. Now, it's got a very fancy name, and that gets the students to come in. But more importantly, what we're doing is we're creating, we're inventing, we're creating, we're iterating, and we're reflecting. We're subversively learning how to use multimedia tools by creating physical objects, which is a very interesting way to go about it. Now, you know, the way it's used in the class, in my class, at least this semester, is they get a good introduction to how to work with 3D modeling programs that can then, in those 3D modeling programs, translate perfectly over to 3D modeling programs for digital animation in the entertainment industry. The tools are exactly the same. They also learn about doing iterations, or what I try to talk to them as drafts, okay, and trying to relate it to a paper. You know, so if you write a paper, the first draft would just be kind of practice, and what you would do is you would have somebody else read it. In a perfect world, I don't know about if all of our students do this, but you would have somebody else read it, you would put it up for review, you would play with it, you would make changes, and then you would make an iteration, okay? So we talk about some of those things as well. And as the semester goes on, they're allowed to print more and more objects that integrate in with some of the other projects that they work on, such as programmable electronics, so creating housings, creating interactive art, multimedia, lots of different really fun things have come out of the classroom. I hope to take a look at this. We've also used the 3D printing for our SEMA program, which is a City Council and NASA funded program here on campus. It's happens every semester, including the summer, which is really fun. I think it gets between 5th grade and 8th grade students here. And that's where we've done the UAV multicopter stuff. This semester, I actually did a demo downstairs for all of them, a few hundred of them. Last semester, I did a demo and crashed spectacularly in front of them. But that was part of it, is I crashed it, and I was just able to reprint it out and make a new one. And I was able to have spare parts on hand and lots of really fun things. So there's some neat stuff that goes on in that. And here are some pictures of that event. So the multicopter does fly. I'm not very good at flying it, but it does fly around fairly well. And next semester or over the summer, we're going to have another multicopter that does autonomous flying, and hopefully have some really high-end customized parts and be able to create an open source model that we can then give back to the community. And I'll show you a little bit about what that means here in a second. So, so in the classroom, over the past year and interacting with other people that run makerspaces, not just within CUNY, but outside of CUNY, there's 4 real classifications that I can come up with, and I'm sure you guys can come up with more classifications of how to use 3D printing in the classroom. Now, this actually might work for doing a video project or an audio project or any type of digital media. It's almost runs parallel to some of the values and some of the creation tools. So the first one would be, excuse me, direct invention or creation. So coming up with an idea, creating it digitally. There's also materialization of abstract concepts. Kevin's using it as a scale model to kind of visualize something large. This would be an abstract concept of an algorithm. Saying, okay, this is a modeling algorithm that's now physical. So instead of plotting it on a graphing calculator, you can print it out here. And we'll take a look at some examples that I've been able to find. There's also iteration and reflection. So this would be like, what you can use in an English class where you create something, okay? And it doesn't have to be complex or groundbreaking or interesting, really, but as long as it works within the confines of the classroom. But you reflect on it. You look back on the process, what you learned, what you hope other people will learn, how you can apply it to some other aspect in your college life and your outside life. There's a lot of writing that can be involved in the creation of 3D objects. There's also a mashup and remix culture. So, taking from the community, making something on your own, and giving it back and seeing what people do with it. That's a very popular one that I know Michael uses quite often, and we use it in the building and hacking class as well. So let's talk about direct invention and creation. What does it mean to invent something or create something out of nothing? That means you're starting from scratch, from ground zero. You have an idea and you want to make it a physical object. So there's lots of steps that you have to go through. Now in the EDU 2C class, 230 class, I'm going to switch over to, oh, hello. I'm going to switch over to my desktop here. So in our EDUC 230 course, some of the work that we've been doing is the students are creating tools for either disabled students or students with special needs or just little tiny students, toddlers and children, creating tools for them. And some of the really neat tools that have come out, there's one of my favorites is And this Tinkercad, we're going to go over Tinkercad here in a little bit, but Tinkercad, they've actually went through and created, let me open this up a little bit more. They've gone through and they've created a modular fork and spoon design, okay, where you have a handle which is right here, and you can choose different color-coded forks and knives, and they've actually built a better fork. I mean, think about it. Has anybody been around a toddler? You know that they have a lot of trouble getting that fork on that piece of pasta. So, you know, one of the ideas that they had is to triple the fork. Okay, and it looks pretty dangerous, but it's awesome. And the fact that it's color coded, you know, deals with a lot of challenges that they're trying to overcome in the modules that they're trying to teach to toddlers. Okay, and this is just one example of how they're using this. Another example, a really fun one, is I think you'll like this, George. This is a piano for the blind. Okay, so they've created a small piano that has Braille on top of it. Okay, now a lot of these things you can actually go out and buy, but what we're finding with printing out the 3D objects is that the students really take ownership in the things that they create, and they tend to deploy themselves at a higher level in the analysis and the implementation and the iteration of these objects. Now that's something that I know that I have a challenge with a lot of my students, but when they actually get their object in their hands and start to play with it and think of ways to make it better, it really engages them in a way that they really can't be engaged doing something in theory. So this is a very fun course to work with. So if you want to look at some of these, they're all tagged with EDUC 230, or most of them are.
I think one thing you should definitely mention is none of these students, this is like a single day workshop of how to use the 3D model.
Yeah. Well,
Never
it's
done any 3D modeling before.
yeah. So essentially, what happens with this class is we've made it a little bit better than the last semester. That's a really good point. These are not 3D. They're not pre-engineering students. They're not communication students. They are students that these students are eventually going to go on to be teachers, right? Yeah, they're going to be K through 12 teachers, and they're learning how to make physical objects, okay? And what it does is it teaches them how to be part of a larger community that shares physical objects, just like communities like on YouTube share video media and audio media. But they're learning these tools based off of 3 small workshops, much like the one I'm giving you, that I come in and say, these are the tools, these are the resources to learn more about the tools, and this is how you should properly use and share the tools. And I'll see you in a couple weeks. And honestly, these students have responded extremely well. So, you know, after I think 5 or 6 weeks, I'll come in and I'll actually bring in, I meet with them individually before I print out their 3D models and have them make adjustments. And when I think their model is ready, I print it out and then deliver it to the classroom, and that's where they get to really take a look at it. And sometimes the models are much larger than what can be printed out. So one of the models here, excuse me, don't mind my cold. One of the models, where is it? It's a very large helmet. I think they got rid of it. Lots of times I scare them, but I think they may have gotten rid of it from this tag cloud. So, but there's a group of students in the class that have created a very large 3D, a very large model of a helmet. Okay, and that's kind of cool. Look at that. So, a very large model of a helmet that has a gel padding on the inside for students with that are prone to having epileptic seizures, I believe. So it's kind of an iteration of a product that's already out there, and they incorporated some very interesting things into it. So, oh, here it is, right here. So this is the model. Oh, it looks like that they updated it. Now, what's really neat about these models is, as they're tagged and as I print them out, the students can constantly be updating them. So I can see them change in real time as students are working on them. So it's almost like a living document. Well, this is a complex model, so it's going to take a little bit to load up here. But these students will iterate twice before their final model is actually printed out in full size, okay, and given to them as their final project. So this is really a semester-long project. So when you think about how to incorporate some of these concepts into into the classroom, you know, this can't be done in a week. It really can't. It's very tough. Even with kind of the grassroots technology that we're using to do consumer level 3D printing, it is really a challenge. So things like this model had to be split up into two so it could be properly printed out on our MakerBots. And even when it printed out, it still had some trouble. But a model like this would be printed out and then glued together in two pieces. Okay, so there's lots of creative thinking, creative ways to split up some of these models and make them work, make them work where they would work on our 3D printers and work on other 3D printing manufacturing processes such as shapeways. So we also have materialization of abstract concepts. Okay, so if you want to use this in your classroom, we're not where every student is creating something or inventing something, but you want to materialize something that you've been talking about for weeks or days or months, and say, listen, this is what I've been doing. This is what a crystalline structure looks like when it is growing. This is what the first flute looked like, and this is how you would hold it, okay? So trying to find those things and show students those things that don't work well as showing a Google image, okay? That wouldn't work well as just kind of talking about it and doing a drawing on a whiteboard, okay? When you can have students hold the physical objects, and in your case, George, play them in your classroom, it's mind-blowing, that's, you know, type stuff. So really cool one is this is a really cool thing that I like. This is a stereographic projection. Okay, so this is on Thingiverse. This is kind of a semi-open source, and I'm going to do semi-open source place to share 3D models. But this is a great place to find models to start with and to have students become, I don't know, to become inspired with some of the things that they actually can create, whether they want to create it from scratch or borrow a model. Be inspired by it, use it to do something else. This is a physical object that talks about stereographic projection, where essentially this uses an overhead light to project light through a 3D object that produces parallel lines. Okay, so there's a lot of geometry and trigonometry happening here, and this could be used for ray tracing. In 3D models simulation, this could be used for all sorts of stuff, figuring out paths of light, you know, understanding microscopes. There's lots of really interesting concepts that can be conveyed through an object and a small LED. So let me show you what the video looks like.
Hi, my name is Henry Segerman. This is stereographic projection. A sculpture that illustrates stereographic projection. So stereographic projection is a map from the sphere to the plane. The way that it works is you look at the north pole of the sphere and you draw straight lines from the north pole down onto the plane. Each such line hits the sphere once and hits the plane once. And so the map from the sphere to the plane is where does the line hit the sphere, that maps to where the line hits the plane. And why are we sitting in the dark? Well, straight lines are pretty well approximated by light rays. And so this is the light on my cell phone, which is a pretty good approximation to a point light source. And if you arrange the light at the North Pole, then the light rays effectively do stereographic projection, and these curves on the sphere are mapped to the straight line grid on the plane. This is stereographic projection.
Isn't that amazing? Like, that's unbelievable. Now, this isn't really a new concept, but it's a concept that you can find and create and print out locally here, and you can, instead of waiting next year to order it online and get it sent here and get the kit and pay Elsevier or buy a book or do something like that, print it out and use it in your classroom immediately. There's a lot of really cool power in that, and having control of the things that you create for your classroom. Okay, so a lot of these tools are free, are open source, are easily found. So when you do find it, I can actually download this and print this out immediately. okay, through Thingiverse. Now, if you search on Thingiverse, and I did this with Mr. Kevin Lynch, we took a look at or did I do it with you? I think I did it with Dan Roby. There's a professor here at York, Dan Roby, who's using crystals, and he's been making his own tools. He's been making his own crystal tools to teach students in the classroom, but he only has one set. He wants to be able to make 30 sets. So we're trying to create a set of crystals that interlock together like kind of like Legos in a way, and teach students. But we were talking about these things, and I did a very simple search on Thingiverse, and somebody's already done it. Okay, and somebody's already done it really, really well, actually. So, you know, my advice to Dan was to take a look at the models that exist and see how you can improve upon them that would fit perfectly into your classroom environment. Now, that's the thing. A lot of times we get tools that we use in our classroom that kind of fit. You know, they work in this one situation. But one of the things that 3D printing or invention in general for you guys as teachers in the classroom is that you get complete customization. You know, now does that mean you have your name on it or something like that? No, and that's not what I'm saying. That means if you want to create a module or a course structure based around a very specific object or learning tool, you can create that. You can make multiple iterations, and you can make it better over time, and it's yours. Okay, and it's also something that you can talk about with other educators. You can share. You can give away. So say you make a really great 3D model of one of the first flutes, George. You can actually interact with other communities at other colleges and say, hey guys, I have this great 3D model. Here's the model for free. You know, you can buy it on Shapeways for $5, or you know, come on in and I'll print it out for you, or send it to you, or you can print it out in your own Makerspace. You know, there's something really engaging with that. You know, and I find it extremely exciting. So we also have iteration and reflection. Now this is one of my favorites because this engages groups in the classroom. In addition to, it really engages the student-teacher relationship. So as students are creating or coming up with an idea, and this really works with the direct invention and creation model. But iteration and reflection, this is, in my classes, what we do is we kind of look at what already exists, okay? So somebody wants to create a better pocket brush to comb their hair. So they look at what they've purchased in the past and why it hasn't worked, and then they make modifications to it, okay? But as they make the modifications to it, we're printing out an iteration, they're using it, they're making it better, we're printing out another iteration, they're using it, they're making it better. But the entire time what they're doing is they're documenting the process, okay? They're using their cell phone camera, they're using video cameras, they are writing about it, they're blogging, they're engaging other communities, they're asking folks who've designed pocket brush or pocket combs on Thingiverse what programs do they use, you know? What did they model it after? How did they do it? And this type of engagement really opens up the class to other communities online. In addition to really enforcing with the students that you know, the first time you think of something isn't the last time you think of something, you know? And I don't know, we are doing a little bit of research in the EDU C230 course to document how well 3D printing is being reflected in the student work and what the outcomes are. So hopefully we'll have at least some good data this summer based on that class. But some of these ideas can be seen in, we host the building and hacking course on a website called Maker Commons, and right now it's in beta form. But what Maker Commons is, it's a website for maker courses like mine, where we're creating objects or doing programming or a multitude of things from, you know, paper mache to embeddable electronics. It's a place for us to share assignments, okay, and share our work and share student work and engage students with a broader community. But I actually have an assignment on Maker Commons called Tinker, Invent, Iterate, Repeat. And you know, it's a very basic intermediate level assignment where they get to actually create a 3D object in Tinkercad and slowly make it better, make it more complex over time. Brainstorm, you know, take a look at what possible solutions they want to fix in their life, or, you know, very specific. And I ask them not to make it something that fixes a problem for everybody in the world, but that fixes a certain problem that they have in their life. Okay, from not being able to have a glass holder on a nightstand that's big enough for somebody's very heavy, very thick glasses, to creating a back scratcher that's that's long enough to scratch their cat's back from the couch. Okay, so lots of really fun things come up from here. So we actually have the students post their responses or post their projects as they're being iterated within the comments section of Maker Commons, and it makes for a really fun way to do this. So we have like a jewel ring box. Okay, here's a chip and cookie dispenser. This is a fun one. Oh, she deleted it already. This is another one of the things that we talk about in these classes, trying to manage your digital media and keeping it online as long as possible. Here's a cool one. I don't know how well this one works, but this is the sporf. Let's see if it's still there. So this is a modular spork and knife combination where you can, as they start to get used a little bit more, you can swap them out for different utensils, which is really interesting. Now this is actually a mashup of 3 or 4 different designs found on Thingiverse. So the clip design, he basically took it from something else and plugged it onto a spork. And it actually worked very, very well. Now, it was a very complex print and took quite a long time to get done, but for his project, it was, I would say, successful. So if you guys get a chance, even folks online, take a look at makercommons.org. And I'm going to say that it's in beta one more time because it's got a lot of issues with it. But hopefully this summer we can redo some of it. So and finally we have what I call the mashup and remix. Now, mashup and remix culture has been around in digital media and even analog media forever, since the invention of media. But as far as physical objects, only in the past, I would say 5 or 6 years, has this really become a reality with the introduction of desktop 3D printers. And with the introduction of very easy tools to download and share your 3D objects. So there's actually a really great project on Maker Commons done by Tim Owens at University of Mary Washington called Mash It and Make It, where he actually he had his students do a 3D scan of his head, okay, and do a 3D scan of their heads and put it on cat bodies, which was a lot of fun. So basically, you find a model on Thingiverse, find another model, and combine it using a tool we call MeshLab or Mesh Mixer. Okay, that's a free tool. You print it, you photograph it, and then you narrate it. You give it a story. You give it a fictional story. You create a backstory for it. So it's really cool, and some really great things have come of it. Now, this type of model has actually been used by, this type of model of mashup and remix has been used by other folks, popular folks, such as Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert actually threw a challenge out there for people to mash up his head, a 3D model of his head, and do different things with it for 3D printers. So this is the Colbert. Okay, this is Stephen Colbert's digital 3D head mashed up on a teddy bear, and then we have the Colbert Thulu, which is a Colbert and like an octopus, Cthulhu or something like that. Isn't that fictional? Do you guys online know who that is? Yeah. So there's a lot.
People in the peanut gallery?
Yeah. Do you know who Cthulhu?
What was the question?
Who's Cthulhu? Do you know who that is?
Mr. Who? Sorry to hear.
Oh, is this Robert?
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Are you enjoying everything so far?
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. It's really cool.
It is. We're gonna.
It's hard to hear the name you were saying. That's all.
Oh, Cthulhu, I think is who it is. It's a fictional.
No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a fictional god that atheists use to kind of make. Is it? Yeah. Okay. That too. So within mashup and remix culture, and let me try and get off my big face here. Now, mashup and remix culture, we can really do some interesting things, and you can do it quickly. Now, mashing up multiple 3D models. Sorry about that. mashing up multiple 3D models is actually a very quick and easy thing to do. So if you create a module in your course that you want to do in a week or two, okay, mashups can be done very easily because you're not learning brand new tools like Tinkercad or ABC 123D app or Mesh Mixer or any of these other more complex software packages that need multiple weeks to kind of master. Okay, so the mashup I really enjoy. So, how does all this work? How's everybody doing? Does anybody have any questions? I'm kind of buzzing through some of this stuff, but I want to get to the fun part where we're actually making things. No questions? Okay, so demo time. So essentially, there's 6 or 7 different, let's see if I can get to this. There's 6 or 7 different software packages that we use, not only in the building and hacking course, but I also use this in just about any class that I go to and talk about 3D printing as a function of learning. Okay, the first one would be Tinkercad.com. Tinkercad.com is a 3D printing, or it's a 3D creation program. Now you create 3D models that you can upload to Minecraft. You can download and put in your own video games, such as the Unreal Engine. You can do lots of really cool things. But one of the great things about Tinkercad is it works very well with Thingiverse, where you can import models within Tinkercad and manipulate them and combine them very easily. So Tinkercad, this is very important to understand. Tinkercad is where you create, okay? Thingiverse is where you share, okay? Thingiverse is where you share. And it's also where you find inspiration with 3D models. So the 3D model for the quadcopter that I built last year is actually part of an open source project that multiple people have iterated hundreds of times to get to that model right there. Actually, the model that I have right here is very outdated compared to what they have now. So every 2 or 3 weeks, I think I get an update that talk about how this model has gotten better over time, how they've made it lighter, faster, stronger, more transparent, using multiple materials as the materials get better and stronger. So here's one of them. This is actually, this was actually a Kickstarter project that got, it kind of got slurped up and given to the 3D community, and the 3D community created this, okay? And this is a micro quadcopter, so it's another flying machine like the one I have over there, but it's much, much smaller and it's foldable. And it's super lightweight, and it's actually very cool. I kind of want to make it. But somebody had created a Kickstarter model where you could, donate $500, and after about 6 months after they patent and license it and make it, you can do it. And the 3D community said, screw that. I can make this. We can make this ourselves, okay? We can give it away for free. And other people can download it, and other people can make it better. So it's really neat.
Did the Kickstarter project fail, you think?
No. What the Kickstarter project ended up doing is they shifted their focus to provide what 3D printers can't. So they actually created, they kept their model the exact same, but now they're making it out of milled aluminum, okay? Which is a much higher quality manufacturing process. It's much more stronger. So it's milled aluminum and carbon fiber, which 3D printing on the desktop can't do yet. But I'll tell you what, it's pretty darn close. There's carbon fiber printers out there now. There's printers that can print out high strength nylon. So it's getting there. We're getting to the point where it's getting cheap enough that doing one-offs or very custom models are very easy and quick to create, print, deliver, or do on your desktop. Or in a university environment, have somebody else do. Yes?
So we would design this or create it in the first thing and then which is called what? CAD?
Tinkercad. Yes.
Oh, Haskell said that's the English.
Yeah, it's okay.
And then you share it on Thingiverse.
Yep, and then you share it on Thingiverse.
And it's not copyrighted. Anybody can contribute to this idea.
Well, yes, you make that decision. I mean, you're still in control of your objects. So
Here's my helicopter. What do you guys think I should add to it or do with it?
yeah, so I can actually change the license. I can change the license on my object in Tinkercad. So
Just like that?
right now it's attribution share like 3.0, okay? So share alike meaning if I create it, I have to give it back and share alike. Okay, if you do attribution no derivatives, it's you have to say that I created this, but you can't make an iteration. Okay, you can choose what you want to do. That doesn't necessarily mean people aren't going to be able to download it and do what they want with it. That's still, we live in the age of piracy, and that's what happens.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
But I always encourage my students to do attribution share alike, so it's free for anybody to iterate.
Well, it's multiple copy. They're creative. These are all Creative Commons licenses. And it's a nod to remix culture. It says like, hey, I'm happy for you to use this in a non-commercial circumstance. Just give me attribution, just so people recognize the origin of this piece. And I think it's just a model of sharing.
Yeah. But it makes for an interesting topic of conversation in the classroom, especially when you're in a class like mine where you're dealing with digital media and creating that digital media and sharing that digital media. And understanding copyright and the DMCA and what Creative Commons is creates great conversation to talk about property and ownership, okay? So George, it would go really good in your class, for your music class, to talk about who owns what, when you talk about, can you photocopy sheet music, can you share tablature, stuff like that. I think it makes for a very fun way to approach multiple topics that have nothing to do with some of the applied fields and classes that you'd be teaching some of this stuff in.
Can anyone do Tinkercad?
Yeah,
Anybody. Assuming they know how.
Tinkercad's free. I don't teach anything that students can't do at home and isn't free.
So I can go on Tinkercad and make my own Minecraft?
Yep.
Or version of
And what's great is here, let me find a simple model. Okay, I'm going to click Tinker this. Okay.
Could an
And
8-year-old do this?
yep. This is made for 8-year-olds.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it is made for 8-year-olds. And if you don't have a 3D printer, you can send this model to Shapeways in Long Island City and have it 3D printed in just about any material that you would like.
Or we can send it to you.
Or you can send it to me. And I will say, why are you using college resources for your 8-year-old stuff? But I wouldn't say that, not for you. So essentially, when you open up Tinkercad, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to do this today. When you open up Tinkercad, you can go up here and click Design. You can say Download for Minecraft. Okay? You can say Download for 3D printing. Order a 3D print. Okay? Upload to Thingiverse.
Oh, you can do it directly from there?
Yep. And this is why we use this. This is a software suite that we use in conjunction with the coursework because it integrates directly. There's no saving it to a hard drive then uploading it. And a lot of these programs actually have Android apps, iPad apps. They work on Linux. They work on PC. They work on Mac. You can do it at home. So when a lot of this stuff takes time to create, and our lab space, at least for the CT program, is extremely limited. So what we end up doing is saying, okay, a lot of this work is done from home, so you really have to make sure that the student can use this stuff at home.
And then how much space does it take up in your computer?
0.
Because it's all on the web.
0. It's all cloud-based, yeah.
Tinkercad is free to use.
Yep.
So why is it free? I know why Thingiverse is free.
Yeah, how do you
Okay, so that's a really good question. The question was, why is Tinkercad free? Well, the answer to that is because Tinkercad is owned by Autodesk, and Autodesk has a suite of apps that start from free to paid. Okay, so think of it as the taste that the drug dealer gives you, that little taste to get you more. So the reason why Tinkercad is free is because it can't do very complex things. Actually, it can, but it's very difficult to do very complex objects, okay? So once you talk about creating objects for engineering purposes, Tinkercad isn't as accurate as it needs to be, okay? You can't design a thrust vector valve for the space shuttle on Tinkercad.
That's a shame.
You may, but you have to design everything else around it to make up for the problem. So,
You have to buy the good stuff.
so if you take a look at Autodesk, Autodesk has a lot of great free applications, but it slowly moves up into the paid Autodesk Fusion, Autodesk Inventor, lots of really cool stuff that we're eventually going to pay for here at the campus if we can create our own. What we're trying to do is create our own concentration based around 3D design and user interface creation. So kind of, eventually we'll be there with some of these tools, but those take multiple semesters and multiple classes to learn and move up to. And it deals with a lot of maths and interdisciplinary kind of study. So the reason why we use Tinkercad and Thingiverse is because it's free and it's simple. Yes?
Right. I think that from the Thingiverse, you can also download the object from there or import it into the Tinkercad.
Yeah.
And then you can build upon it.
Yeah, so if I have an object in Thingiverse that I want to import into Tinkercad, all I have to do is go to Thingiverse, click download this thing, find the part, okay, copy the link, copy link address, go back into Tinkercad and paste the link address in there and then import the object. And that object automatically gets put into my new object, right? And there it is. Now that's how simple it is, okay? That's how simple it is. And
So
you know, where's the tricky part? There's no tricky part. This is easy.
It is.
It seems easy. It seems easy. Now this is one of the caveats of this, okay? Like, it is very easy to kind of copy, paste, drop it in, mash it up, kick it out, 3D print it. And honestly, I mean, it is that easy, okay, at this level. As long as you're not doing complex objects, okay? Let's take a look. If we can look at the other application is an application called Makerware, okay? So we've kind of talked about how to create objects, how to share objects, how to push them back and forth very quickly and simply. Now, the big part comes in when you actually want to print it out. Now, for our specific printers, okay, now this works with different printers. We're actually going to get, hopefully this summer, we're going to get a couple different new 3D printers that aren't FDM printers, where they don't use fused plastic. They use an epoxy to create objects with multiple materials and multiple colors. So we'll use a completely different software suite for that. But MakerBot and Makerware, it's still free. So what you can do is when you create your object, okay, you can go download for 3D printing, okay, and the format that we use is an STL, stands for, well, there's multiple meanings for this, but stereolithography is the most common meaning. You can say download for 3D printing. A little download tab pops up down here. I don't know if you guys can see the bottom. It takes a minute, crunches it up, gives you an STL, and it downloads. Now, when you get this STL, it's just like having a Word document or an MP3. Same thing, same file format. But it's more like a PDF, where it's not really editable, okay? It's just ready for 3D printing, okay? So the STL should come down here in a minute. It takes a while. Now, because it's free, it's a pain in the butt, and it crashes, okay? But it does autosave and all these other things. And lots of times what we do is we have problems in our labs, specifically in our Mac labs, when every single person in the lab is trying to access Tinkercad and Thingiverse, our packet shaping programs within IT will actually shut down our access to Tinkercad. So here's the STL. And I think everybody can see that. Can everybody see the STL? So I'm going to click on it. What's going to happen is Makerware is going to open up. See if I can open up Makerware.
That's the interface with the printer?
Yes. So the Makerware program, think of it as the printer driver. Okay? So when you click print, the driver pops up and says how many pages, what quality, how fast do you want it in color? That's what this program does. It prepares you for that process. Okay? In Makerware, I'm going to just go full screen. Hopefully you guys online can actually see it. Now Makerware is, and within Makerware you have the platform, okay? Same dimensions, and you have this build box. Now this build box is where you can actually 3D print your object. Now here, what we can do is we can do lots of fun things. We can scale it. We can make it bigger, right? We can move it around. Okay, very simply. Now this is also made for 8-year-olds. Okay, you can't do any editing. Now this kind of looks like Tinkercad, but it's nothing like Tinkercad. You can't make an edit. You can't make something stronger. You can't add to it. You can't mesh things up. But when you do that, you have to make some decisions. Okay, and a lot of these decisions are based upon how well you know your specific 3D printer. how long do you want it to take to print and how much material do you want to use, okay? That's what it is here. Now, first iteration, okay, of an object, I usually have the students print out at 50% size just so they know things fit together and they work, okay? So what I do is I click on the object, I click scale, and I take it down to 50%. 50, boom. So I can print it out small, it prints out quick, it prints out fast, and they get it, and everything's to the exact same scale, okay? And then when I make it at a low resolution, okay? And I usually print them hollow because they don't need to be that strong, okay? But the cool thing about this is even if you don't have a 3D printer, okay, you can click the button Preview Before Printing, and what's going to happen is it's going to create a virtualized session of what the 3D printer is going to do to hold that ridge that's coming over past a 45-degree angle, okay? Because gravity is not your friend with this type of FDM 3D printing, okay? It is not your friend, and it'll screw up your objects. Now, if you noticed, our fork here has these little support structures here. Now, I added these in, okay, to keep the fork from falling over, okay? Because what was happening is the fork was printing out, and when it almost got to the top, okay, it would actually fall over, which was really, really bad, okay?
Did this happen while it was at half scale?
Yeah. Is the biggest kind of absorbent material when it comes to 3D printing, okay? So with Jinbai's class, there's 30 students, I think, right? 30 students. My class, there's 20 students, and they're working in groups. So we have roughly 15 to 27 models, okay? In this semester, they were all due within 2 weeks of each other. It took me 2 weeks solid to print out 75% of their objects. 75%. Now, that's just because we don't have, the support folks to be able to watch and diagnose problems with this. It's taken me almost a year to figure out how to print things out in a good, and to put it very simply, to print things out where they don't have errors and problems. So what happens is when we have a 3D print that's due that I'm delivering to the classroom, I actually have to wipe my schedule clear for about a week. So I can be around, play with the models, and watch the 3D printer, okay? I made the mistake early on of walking away from the 3D printer overnight while something printed, and when I came back in the morning, the printer had ripped itself apart. Because what had happened was the model actually shifted off of the platform. The model shifted off of the platform, and the printer is not like this printer in general does not know when an error is happening. Unlike your printer at home, paper jam, it stops, says, hey, feed me paper, feed me material, okay? With this, the model twisted sideways, and the printer kept printing, and it was jamming into the model, ripping itself apart. And it ripped the fans off, it broke the belt, okay? It basically tore itself apart, and it was one of the worst things to walk into in the morning. And that's actually happened twice, okay? Both times I broke my own rule, all right? So, this stuff is very time intensive on the printing part, okay? And it's very time intensive on the creation part. Unless you're doing a remix, you can do those very quickly, okay? But even then, we actually have to send our 3D models to a cloud service that fixes them before we can print them out, okay? So within Makerware, you just want to click this Preview Before Printing, and what it does is it slices it up, okay? It slices it up, and then gives you your model, and you can actually watch it print. So students can do all of this. They can do virtualized printing at home, okay, which makes it a really cool thing to do. So that's the general, outline of what we can do here at York and what a lot of different makerspaces that don't have like an engineering program and a dedicated 3D design fabrication lab available. Now I know that like Brooklyn Tech, do we have anybody online from Brooklyn Tech? I know somebody from Queens College might be on. It doesn't sound like it so far. But let me just find this. It's one of my favorite things that happens. Okay. So what I want to do is everybody has laptops in here. Go to Tinkercad. Tinkercad's been tested. You can go to Tinkercad. You can, if you want to create an account, you can. If you don't have to. But what you can do is you can start creating objects right away, okay, from simple objects to complex objects. You can import other Tinkercad work from other people online, and you can do it very quickly and easily. So that's what I would suggest. Now, as you're doing that, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you how to kind of start from scratch pulling in models, okay? So what I want to do is just click Create New Design. And now Tinkercad's extremely basic. So what we do is the geometric models that we work with are called primitives. Now, primitive geometric models can pretty much create anything you want, okay? So if you want to create, a hammer, you can make that from just about anything. Can I help you? Yeah, come on in. So, so when we create a model, what we can do here, there's a laptop open right there if you want to come in. We can just create a box by just dragging a box to our platform, okay, our work plane. We can click on the box, and just like a digital object, like a photo, within excuse me, within Microsoft Word, you can drag that box and make it just about any size. Okay. You can also, if you guys can see, I don't know if you can see, I actually have a mouse Bose on, which shows you what modifier keys that I'm using. So that's Control, that's Option, that's Command, that's Shift. Okay, and if you hold down Shift, Shift is the big one. It constrains proportions, so it actually won't change. It will change all three axes of your object. Okay. Now, the big thing about working in Tinkercad is you have to understand is the only thing that you can really do in Tinkercad is create an object and subtract material away from that object. So say I want to create a park bench, okay? So what I would do is I would create the basics of a bench, okay? And then I would create a box hole here, okay? And I could take this in, and what I'm doing is I'm creating negative space within my current object that is solid red. Okay? I made a couch, okay? So when I select both objects and group them together, what's going to happen is Tinkercad's going to look at my solid object and my negative object and combine them and create an object that is more complex than the original. So because it's free, you have to wait for this little guy to quit turning. Okay? And if you guys are working over Wi-Fi, it takes a little bit longer too. Now, I have a lot of things going on my computer because of the Google Hangouts, so it takes a little while longer. At home, depending on your internet speed, it usually, come on, guy, usually doesn't take this long, but.
There are only those two kinds of negative spaces, box and cylinder?
Absolutely not. No, anything can be a negative space. So if you look at your geometrics, I can actually take a cylinder or a pyramid, okay, and I can give it, in the inspector over here, I can give it two different properties. I can give it a color, or I can make it a hole. So if I click on the object and make it a hole, actually, it looks like I just made my.
So the idea is you could make a more complex object and then turn that into a hole as well.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Effectively, like you wanted to make a keyhole.
Yep.
You could combine the cylinder with you could extract the. Yeah.
So I can select the pyramid here and make it a hole, and you'll see that the pyramid becomes a hole. And I'm holding down Shift, and I can turn it on a 45-degree angle, or a 90 at this point, and I can punch a little pyramid into the couch here. Okay. Select all my objects that I want to make whole, group them together, wait for it to save, and what we'll have is we'll have a couch with the pyramid punched out. What's up? It's a remote control holder, exactly. So you're creating something new here, which is great, you know. So it's actually taking a little bit of time, and most of the time when I do demos, this happens a lot where I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have about 8 machines in this room. For those of you online. I have 8 machines that are all pinging Tinkercad at the same time
On the same IP.
from the same IP address. So sometimes you actually have to work with your IT department a little bit more and talk about opening up an IP for a certain amount of time.
Because what happens sometimes with these services, just so you know, in the classroom, like when we're using a web-based tool, you know, all the queries to that tool from various computers are coming from one IP address. So sometimes
follow
these
me.
web services see this as like, you know, potentially malicious denial of service type of activity. It's like one computer is pinging the crap out, one IP is pinging the crap out of the service, and they'll kick the IP off.
Yeah. So, and it's also good to know when you are teaching this, you have to test all of the software in whatever computer lab that you're using, okay? Because with very specific web browsers, okay? So right now I'm using Chrome, but you guys should be using Firefox, right? I found that Firefox works best with this because it needs the OpenGL 2.0 extensions, okay? So in Firefox, the newest version of Firefox has all that stuff built in. So that's just from my experience from teaching across multiple multimedia labs here on your college. So you got to test everything. You have to test Thingiverse. You have to test Tinkercad. You have to test if you want to use any of these other applications, such as 123D Catch, 123D Design, 123D Make. These are all extensions of Tinkercad. Okay. Specifically, 123D Design is like Tinkercad Plus. Okay, or an extended version of Tinkercad that allows you to do more complex objects. So for pre-engineering, I would say skip Tinkercad altogether because 123D Design actually looks like Autodesk Inventor, okay? And it runs in the browser, but it also runs as a standalone web app across platforms, which is really cool. So 123D Design, you'll notice it looks like Tinkercad, but it does not act like Tinkercad at all. Okay. Now it uses all the same button commands and primitives, okay, that Tinkercad uses. So if you know how to use Tinkercad, you can start using this stuff right away. But it starts to introduce more complex nomenclature and complex understanding of how to create physical or scalable objects, okay? And one of the big things to understand is this idea of, let me open it up, okay, is press and pull, okay? Now, if Tinkercad, let me jump back to Tinkercad. So Tinkercad's still dealing with these very simple objects. But 123D Design, you know, this idea of press and pull, where you create, when you create an object, instead of, okay, I can pull it up, but I can actually start to do complex tweaking of objects, okay? Now creating this object, you can't do in Tinkercad. I have not been able to create this very simple object where I can tweak, press, pull, I can chamfer edges, which is a very important thing to do. Okay, and chamfering edges meaning round edges out.
How on earth did you make the fork then?
That person made the fork through a mashup. Okay, so they took a fork off of Thingiverse and mashed it up with their objects. Okay.
You can't do that to that fork.
But you can if you decide to use 123D Design. Okay, in 123D Design, I don't even have an account. I mean, I do, but I haven't logged in. So up and running in 123D Design quicker than Tinkercad, okay? And I actually think that Autodesk does this on purpose, okay? I think that Autodesk makes 123D Design a little bit better because once you start to get better at 123D Design, what ends up happening is that you can't do certain things in 123D Design, and then you have to move up to Autodesk Fusion or Autodesk Inventor, and now you start paying for things. So it's actually a great. It is great up until a certain point when you start making these complex objects. So it's kind of a neat thing. And I enjoy 123D Design more, and I'm trying to teach myself this. Now, this is a really good time to talk about how to teach your students how to do these things, okay? you know, if you're here, you're probably digitally skilled to a certain level, and I expect that you could probably teach yourself Tinkercad in an afternoon, enough to teach it, okay? But your students, on the other hand, I don't like teaching how to push buttons, okay? I would rather have my students search out that information themselves. But Tinkercad, I'm going to sign out of Tinkercad. Tinkercad on its own has a learning feature that can teach just about anybody, from grade schoolers to middle schoolers to college students, how to use itself, okay? And of course, it's waiting for Tinkercad. So what you would do is you would click the Learn function on Tinkercad here. And learn, I think there's about 25 different tutorials that take you step by step. Now, they're not video tutorials. They're hands-on learning experiences where it gives you a primitive shape. You're expected to duplicate it, move it, size it, shape it. And as you attain certain milestones, it gives you stars and stuff like that. Now, this is why I say it's made for 8-year-olds, because, you know, it's kind of over, you know, it's really, it's not demeaning, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's a good place to start. I wouldn't, if you're doing any complex 3D modeling, I wouldn't stay on Tinkercad for too long. It's a great introduction before you move to Autodesk 123D design, okay? But these are all lessons, and they're basics lessons. There's gadgets that you can make. There's buttons. And if you go through all of these lessons, you will be an expert at Tinkercad, okay? You will be an expert because you will realize that you can only do very simple things in Tinkercad. Now, most of the time, if I want to do something quick and dirty, okay, where I just need to get it out, I'll do it in Tinkercad very quickly because I can get it done in Tinkercad very quick. If I have a high-speed connection, I know I can get it done and kick it out, okay? And get it 3D printed very quickly and literally download it directly to Makerware. And Ryan, you want to get a shot of the 3D printer so people can see where we're at? Here, I'm going to share this with you. Sorry for the poor video quality, everyone. This is our hack. So yeah, so that's the process how I do it. Now, if you guys want to play with Tinkercad, more than happy to show you how to do it. If you want to play with Thingiverse, really leaving it up to you. Whether or not you want to go into Thingiverse, find models, import them into Tinkercad, and play around with them a little bit. You know, the biggest problem that I find is understanding the navigation, okay, and knowing that Tinkercad, there's two sides to navigation. One is moving an object. The other is actually physically moving the camera around your object as you see it in 3D space, okay? Those are the two biggest challenges in getting students, at least, to understand how to move things around. Because sometimes you'll move an object and you think that you're moving the camera, and you're actually moving the objects as they relate to other objects. Okay, so as I put an object here on the space, I can click the object and move it around on the plane, okay? Or with your laptops, you can 2-finger click, okay? Or at home, it's right-click with a mouse. You really want a 3-button mouse, okay, to use these applications. Any 3D application really does require a 3-button mouse. Although they're getting better with trackpads. So if I right-click or 2-finger click, what I'm doing is I'm orbiting my object here, okay? I'm orbiting my object. And as I scroll in with the scroll wheel, or on the Mac, 2-finger push up, okay, I can zoom in, okay? And if I hold down the Shift key here, okay, I can actually move my whole entire work plane left or right, okay? So when you build your object, it's all about looking at it from different angles, making adjustments, adding and subtracting layers, and then moving your object into other objects. So if you wanted to make an arm, I would start off making the hand first, then the arm part, and then importing them together, and then combining them as a 3D model, okay? Or depending on how you want to print them, you print them in pieces and then combine them later. So you can glue them together, you can create some sort of snap, you know, where you maybe take a Lego and put the female end of the Lego on one side, the male end on the other side, and snap them together. You know, there's lots of different ways to get objects to interact, okay? But when you're thinking about this, you know, think about the color. Think about why you chose that color. Think about the material. Think about why you're choosing that material. Okay? Because the design is one thing, but the implementation is where the actual learning comes from, right? So when your students create your objects, it's not, you know, having them learn a new 3D digital tool is great. It is. But that's not why you're doing it, okay? You're doing it for multiple reasons, you know? One of those reasons is physically working with the object, understanding how things work, getting them to use a different part of their brain and coming at a problem or coming at a solution or coming at a challenge that you've always had in one of your classes from a different angle to see what the results are. That's why we do this, you know? Because when it gets printed out, you know, that's where the real learning happens, I think, you know? So I want to talk about one more thing before I kind of open it up to the few people that we have online. Another place, if you're at a campus that doesn't have a 3D printer, Shapeways. Shapeways is a great place to purchase. Now there's lots of 3D printing, you know, companies out there that'll print up stuff for you, but Shapeways is interesting. One, because it's local; it's here in Long Island City. But more importantly, they do multiple materials. Okay. If you go to their materials hub, so here at your college, we can do rubber-like, we can do soluble, we can do different colors, different transparencies. Okay, but Shapeways can do plastics, aluminum, detailed plastic, which means a very fine type of plastic, frosted detail, which is kind of like a clear acrylic, okay, steel, sterling silver, brass, bronze, elastoplastic, which is a stretchy rubber type material, sandstone, which is full color, which is actually the coolest one, I think, okay, and ceramics. So, you know, given these different properties of these materials, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a Makerspace or an access to 3D printer to design and create for the classroom, okay? Whether you want to go out of pocket or you want to have your department pick it up or apply for a fund or get a grant, you can actually purchase things from Shapeways on purchase order too. Yes?
This is amazing.
It is amazing.
I can make my own earrings.
Well, what type of earrings would you like? Let's take a look.
Sandstone, brass.
Earrings has 2 R's, right?
3D print steel.
Kind of. It's a trick.
I actually have a set of some colleagues in England. They just spent £2 million buying a 3D printer that'll be titanium.
Yes.
Look, you can make pie earrings. That's so cool.
Yeah, so they're really cool. So in what you do is essentially what you're purchasing is the STL or the 3D model from whoever created this, and you're just choosing your metal. So if you look, this is a great way. So these are earrings, pie earrings. So with precious metal, polished silver, it's $44 for the earrings. Raw metal, raw silver, or stainless steel is $10. $10 for stainless
But
steel.
this design, I mean, it's pie, I know, but this design is copyrighted and belongs to MV Salmi,
Yeah, it does. I think so.
but I could make it myself.
Exactly. So this couch that we made, or this little object right here, I can go up, if I'm in Tinkercad and I sign in, I can actually upload my object straight to Shapeways, and they can send it to me within a couple weeks.
And but you have to give the measurements and everything. So
No, that's all done in here. It's all done in Tinkercad.
So how big is this couch in real life?
Well,
You can also, I mean, ask it to print at different scales.
yep. Well, when you send it to them, you have to send it to them. They're going to print it out exactly how you want it. So if you send it to them 5 feet and you meant 5 inches, within reason, they'll print it out within 5 feet. So if you look at this, if I click on Edit Grid, my units are millimeters. Let's just go inches for now. So this is 2 inches,
And they will send you a little
2.205.
couch.
Yep, they'll send me a baby couch. Okay. So if you look, my negative space has been pulled out of my couch
You
here.
should make the mini remote for this.
So, but this is the great thing. Like detail plastic, these earrings only cost $3. Okay? But if I want my couch, I click design and I say, order 3D print. And it says, hey, where do you want to order this 3D print? Do you want to order it from Shapeways, Sculpteo, Ponico, or iMaterialize? Okay? They all have their benefits and drawbacks. Okay, Shapeways is one of the larger ones. They ship very quickly here if you're here in New York, and I've actually purchased stuff from them and got it within a week. Okay, full color sandstone. Michael and I actually have 1/50th scale models of ourselves. We're like this big, which is really cool. So.
For them, do you have to put in all the support structure, all that, or do they figure that out?
No, they take care of that. They do what I've been doing here, is figuring out how to make it print out well. Because what they end up doing is they use high-end 3D printers that have much better support structures, okay, to get the overhangs and make very complex objects, okay? And one of the cool things is it 3D printing in steel? Lots of times, no. What they do is they 3D print it, okay, and make a cast molding, okay, and then put molten steel in the molding, and then, you know, they tumble it and all that stuff. Same thing with brass and sterling silver. It's not actually 3D printed. Now, the titanium 3D printer that Kevin mentioned earlier, that is actually 3D printing titanium using epoxy, but it's not like they 3D print it and pull it out. They 3D print it and probably have to bake it, okay? They very, very hot. So you get the 3D printer and then a huge $1 million oven next to it, you know? So, yeah.
Can I ask a really ignorant question? Because I'm blown away and this is all new to me. Very basic. Why call it printing at all?
The question is, why call it 3D printing if some of the processes aren't printed? Well, it sounds cool. It's got the cachet, but it also means rapid prototyping. Okay, so the titanium 3D printing thing, or printer that Kevin's colleagues have purchased, it's a 3D printer in the sense that it'll print out the object, and then what you do is it's kind of like finalizing. Okay, you still have to do certain things to your object. Like when this object, Ryan, can you go over? When this object comes out of the 3D printer here, I actually have to take it out and do post-production on it. I have to cut away all of the support material. This isn't what it looks like. This lattice work is the support structure to print out this complex object. I have to go in, or Kevin has to go in, and cut away all of the support structure with an X-Acto knife. Yeah. So you still have to do some post-production to this object to make it, to finalize it. And that's part of the thing. So what it just means you can make something from scratch very quickly. That's kind of my definition of 3D printing. Although if I wanted to, I could take this out. I could pack it in clay, in a form, you know, open up the form, close it back up, pour in molten steel, and create a steel version, okay? Or pack it in a form, melt out the plastic, then pour in the molten. There's lots of different manufacturing processes that you can do. So
I'm blown away.
I'm glad you're blown away.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Bye, guys. So yeah, so that's kind of, that's where we are at this grassroots level. You know, I talk about grassroots 3D printing because, you know, this 3D printer costs maybe $1,600, you know. You can build a 3D printer on your own for a much, much less than that, for maybe $500, okay? That has kind of the same attributes as this. You know, you have to have a very high technological or technology, understanding of the technology and how all the components work to really make that happen. So, you know, find somebody in your department that knows what they're doing and, you know, give them a box full of parts and have them print. Here, let me go back to some of this stuff. Okay, cool. So,
I mean, what we're really aiming for is a 3D printer that can print other 3D printers, right?
well, that's the thing is, you know, that's funny that you say that. A lot of these parts that you see on this 3D printer here, I've printed on the 3D printer. And what I've done is, you know, they released this 3D printer 2 years ago, and the community has created more and more parts for it that are better, that last longer, that up the reliability of the printer. So the extruder in here is all 3D printed extruded parts that I've created, okay, or downloaded from the community. And I have actually, since I've modified this 3D printer, I've had very, very little problems with it. Okay. Now we have a 3D printer in the back that's given me only problems, and I've printed out new extruders and printed out better tools for it to work, so it can do multiple materials, and I still get nozzle jams and stuff like that. So, you know, here at York College we have, you know, I was talking about we'll have better printers. So if this one's $1,600, I have a $127,000 3D printer showing up, hopefully, within the next year. Okay. but that printer, the reliability is much higher, okay? And it prints slower, but it's more reliable, more accurate, and can do multiple materials, okay? So hopefully some of these issues can be alleviated. But because it's a high-end industrial type 3D printer, it uses a completely new software suite, okay? So I have to learn new software. Students will have to learn new software to use it. And at the same time, it may not do a lot of the correction that these printers do when you print out your models, okay? And what that means is, the models tend not to be perfect, okay? It's like a spelling error or something that gets through. That stuff still happens, and it happens quite often here. So, I encourage you guys to really go out and look at this. I never took a class on these tools. It's just by using them. I did have a 3D background with 3D animation, computer graphics, so that helped me a lot. But understanding how to print and how to use the tools, it's more of a hands-on experience, okay? But start with Tinkercad, move to 123D Design, download Makerware, virtualize your print, and you'll be right there. And if you're here at the college, you have access to our 3D printers at any time. Just come up and see me, talk to me, let me know what you want to do, and if we have time, we'll work it out. So, I'm going to open this up to anybody online still want to talk? It looks like there's one more person left. Manuel, how are you? Not quite? Okay. Either way. So I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
The Makerware software, is it only used with MakerBot?
Yeah, the Makerware software is only used for MakerBot. It's proprietary for now. There is software called Replicator G. In here, I'll show you it. Replicator G is pretty much for any. Can be used for just about any 3D printer that uses the G code standard. Okay, so G code is actually used on plotting machines. It's a very simple form of kind of printing, even like G code can be used for regular printers. So Replicator G, it just doesn't have this is much more intimidating than Makerware, if you ask me. Makerware just feels a little bit easier to use. It's like, I say it's the soccer mom version, but it kind of, and I say that because I come from a video background, and I talk about iMovie or Windows Movie Maker as, it's made for soccer moms, because you put in your videos and it says, is this a birthday? Is this and it kind of sets everything up and does things for you, and it makes it easy. I don't mean that in any derogatory way. I just mean it's really easy. So when you compare these interfaces, where you have to know a little bit of code, and you have to know exactly how your 3D printer interprets that code, G code is a challenge, okay? But if this were a programming course, and I wanted to teach programming by using G code and how to program your 3D printer, okay, and plot points and understand the algorithms, then I would use G code. So there's a really great argument to get into the software for computer science majors. So probably not our computer science majors here at your college, but science majors somewhere out there. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the Hangout. Does anybody have any questions on the Hangout? Okay. So we're just going to play with Tinkercad if you guys want. I can show you how to use it one-on-one if you wish, and definitely get something to eat over here. All right, Manuel, thanks for showing up.